Hello, 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 everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Scotland Rugby News podcast with me, your host, Bruce Aitchison from Happiness Egg-Shaped, and him over there, Mr. Harper, editor extraordinaire. How are you, sir?
I'm very well, but your left and right's failed you 2 weeks running.
I know, I need to remember that one. It's like looking in the mirror and try to do my eyelashes.
I was going to
That
say,
one.
you and I must spend as long doing our hair
Yeah.
in the mirror. So, yeah, all good.
We would have started on time if you could have got out of hair and makeup, but
Makeup, maybe, not sure about hair.
yeah, it's good to see, and where you think the season's finished, and actually there's probably more to talk about this week than there has been for ages. We'll start with what we're wearing because it's tartan, it's Doddy Day. It was a big man's birthday on the 4th of July, and there's a lot going on. Great to see an announcement, 500,000 to more research. The bandwagon just keeps going.
Yeah, and I think there would have been no doubt when Doddy passed away, a couple of years ago now, that the good work that so many people have done to raise money, raise awareness for MND would continue. But it's great, I think, to mark things like his birthday with news of the funding is great. I think that's obviously a further boost to trying to do something about MND, which is obviously a horrendous illness. And yeah, I think the more that can be done, the better. But yeah, it's been great to see some messages flying, pictures and stuff flying about social media today of not only the My Name's Doddy tartan, but a load of various tartans to mark. The big man was fond of a tartan suit as you are.
Yeah, he used to take the mick out of my tartan suit, and he used to take the mick out of me only having one, because he had plenty. So Doddy, people that know me and have stood next to me for long enough will probably have heard most of the Doddy stories, but Doddy played a big part in me having confidence to stand up in front of folk. It was him that sparked the Happiness Egg-Shaped podcast and me joining you on here, because it was at the back of the first Doddy live shows that I got the bravery to start the podcast. But when Doddy was being given the freedom of Edinburgh, and he got the Edinburgh tartan suit made, and he was up at the chambers, and his handprints are there. I walked past the other day with my girls, and they always say, "Do you want to go in?" And I go in and I just have a look at the handprints, and we have a laugh. But that day was the first day I was doing hospitality on my own for Scotland against the Springboks. So there's 550 folk in the room, the big long hospitality suite, the Thistle suite at Murrayfield. So when Doddy was diagnosed with MND, he decided he wanted to have a say in who his successor was going to be in the Thistle suite, and he said he wanted it to be me. So we worked together for a while. And that was the first day of me being on stage on my own. So Doddy wasn't there. And the hospitality guy, James Nicholson, great guy, now lives in Australia, he said, "Look, you're on your own until Doddy arrives, but we don't know when he'll arrive. He might not make it before kickoff, so it might be you all the way up." So me and the AV guys had planned everything right up till kickoff. Doddy had been up in the centre of Edinburgh, and then he was getting a police escort to Murrayfield. But again, we didn't know how quick he'd be there. So Dodge then arrives, and the door opens at the far end of the Thistle suite, and in walks 20-foot tall Doddy Weir in tartan suit. So everybody like the ripple goes through the room, and they're all looking. And he comes and he stands here right in front of me, just at the bar, right in front of the stage, with this big grin on his face, and everybody knows that he's there, and he's just stood with a big grin on his face and his arms folded, watching me. But the really cool thing about it, or there was a few cool things about it, but the first one was when we worked together, we'd both go up on stage together and we would have a little bit of crack. But it was the only time I ever got to introduce someone on the stage.
Yeah.
And there was 550 folk there. So I got to give him a massive build-up, and the whole place just went whoosh. And he came up on stage, and it took ages for them to shut up. And he was totally embarrassed by the whole thing. But he loved it, but he was embarrassed. But it was cool because I got to do that and witness it, and then they quieten down, they sit down, they starts having a go at me being wee, and is that the same tartan suit as I had on the week before, and all his usual guff. But it was brilliant. And then at half time, he went on the pitch and he got presented with a cheque, I think. And then we did the hospitality after, and he was knackered. He was absolutely burst. And he said to me, as we finished after the game, and the bar closes an hour after the final whistle, and we finish, and he whispers to me, "You need to get me out of here." So I'm trying to get Doddy through 550 folk that all want a selfie, all want him to scribble his signature on their book and all that kind of thing. So eventually I get him out the door at the far end, which is the in between the President's Suite and the Thistle Suite. So Joe Public in there. So I'm thinking, brilliant, he's away home. I get home that night and it's 10 o'clock and I'm scrolling through social media and I'm still high as a kite because I love doing all that stuff. And I'm looking through social media. Remember, the big man's knackered, right? He's had a whole day, freedom of the city, done hospitality, on the pitch at half time, done hospitality, taken every selfie. I was his cameraman. And I'm flicking through social media and he's on the tram from Murrayfield to the middle of the town with everybody posting selfies with Doddy, and he's got a can of Guinness in his hand. And he's smiling in every photo. And then you keep scrolling and he's now on the train from Waverley to Tweedbank, and he's taking selfies with everybody that was on the train. And the only thing that's changed is he's now got a can of Tennent's instead of a can of Guinness. Yeah. And when Kathy picked him up off the train, he was absolutely burst. And I didn't think he could get out of his bed on a Sunday. But the only bit that folks saw was smiling Doddy, who was willing to pose for a picture. And he was just an incredible guy. And my worry when he died was that the foundation would lose momentum. But actually, folk like Kevin Sinfield and, and Rob Burrow and Ed Slater and the work that Rob Wainwright still does and still has the enthusiasm for it and, Kenny Logan. I'm doing an event next week with Jason Fox in London. It's just relentless. And it's incredible. It's absolutely incredible that somebody can have had that impact. But there's a whole lot of folk who didn't remember him being an amazing rugby player.
I think that's it. I think, the years on your top are the years that Doddy played for Scotland. And I remember probably towards the back end of them being at some of the games and thinking, actually, this guy's an amazing rugby player. And it was only, I think maybe a couple of years ago, chatting to Gregor Townsend, had said, Doddy was way ahead of his time as a player, and he was so cruelly robbed of a probable test place in the '97 Lions alongside Martin Johnson when he was kind of kicked out of that tour in Mpumalanga.
Doddy played sevens for Scotland.
And this is it. Like, how many, he was a class rugby player. Like, I know he played back row a bit, but how many second rows now would play international sevens? Like, handful.
How many folk that hated training would play international?
I think sevens. That's maybe a sign of the changed times. That there's a few. There's hundreds of great stories, but Gary Armstrong tells plenty about Doddy's lack of interest, I think, in the Monday to Friday aspect of the Saturday 3:00, and then after games, I think he was great. But during the week, I imagine a few coaches tearing their hair out.
Class. He just, he put Mpumalanga on the map. Like nobody would be talking about Mpumalanga if it wasn't for. Do you know? Here's another like how small the world is. When I was head coach of Watsonians in 2000 and what would that be? 2008, 2009. You used to get CVs of rugby players. Everybody had been an All Black trialist. Everybody had been. Well, do you know what? This is a true story. I got a CV for somebody, and on the CV he'd put they'd played with my nonu's brother at school, as if that was, oh mate, you're in. I'll never forget that. But I got one from an agent, and it was for a South African second row. And this boy looked like a player. It was a boy that had booted Doddy's knee.
Did you turn him down on the strength of that alone?
Can you imagine if I'd brought him to Scotland? Like, I'd have been crucified anyway for bringing a South African in. But bringing in the guy who'd booted Doddie's knee and robbed him a Lions test spot, I would have been hung, drawn, and quartered. Like it would have been. But
it would be hard to defend you for that one, Bruce. To be honest, I think that not bringing him to Scotland was probably one of your better decisions. For all parties, I think he was probably. I don't know what he was doing.
Good for him. He would have got lynched. But I mean, he was, because he probably was going to start next to Martin Johnson, but when folk tell stories about Doddie, you do often hear them tell stories about what happened between the first whistle and the last whistle. It tends to be what happened later on, and we all, pretty much everybody has seen the Living with the Lions, which was the best rugby, like the ones for then on. Folk knew what was going on and they knew the camera was there, whereas that 97 Lions group, with John Bentley became
just ridiculous. Just that I remember as a kid watching that on VHS, and that was like
I had it on video.
My first hook into rugby. I'd been to like a couple of training sessions down at Haddington, and that was the thing that I was like, if this is what rugby's about, get me involved in this, because this looks brilliant. And there's the clip, the mistaken identity clip that goes around,
absolute gold,
brilliant. But there are some bits where it's like the really early days of handheld camcorders.
Well, they handed it over. It was like, right, and now it's your turn. Nay phones, nay.
And he's obviously, Doddie had a couple of goes, and he made a mess of doing a couple of bits to camera, and you can tell he's just either not that interested, or has had a big night out the night before.
When he's getting ready to go,
they're just they're brilliant bits of
getting rid of the Doug.
I thought you had just given up there. Look, they're brilliant bits of rugby TV, and I think that's as much. We should definitely remember Doddie the player, because I think it's easy to think of Doddie the MND sufferer and the campaigner, but as a player, he was way ahead of his time, and he was an incredible character.
Yeah, he was class. He was part of an amazing Melrose team as well. And then he goes to Newcastle and he wins the league, and playing with Alan Tate and Tuilanga and Johnny, young Johnny. Can you imagine the work ethic of Johnny Wilkinson compared to Doddie Weir? He's opposite ends of the spectrum. Two outstanding performers, but
I wonder as Wilco kicked his 100th goal, if Doddie ever walked past him and thought, should I do that?
Doddie would have had his chips and be on his way home by then. He wouldn't be there when he was kicking his 7th, never mind his 100th. Chips and him, Dodge, chips and him. Aye, class. I mean, happy birthday. And I sent Kathy a message earlier, and I've spoken to a few folk today and you see the posts on social media and thing, and it's an incredible guy, and his legacy lives on, and we'll not find a cure in our lifetime, but it'll happen, and a lot of it will be attributed back to George Weir.
Absolutely, it will, and let's hope we do find a cure sooner rather than later, because there's far too many folk going through it and dealing with the consequences. So it's what a bloke Doddie was.
And he's given a lot of folk strength that are battling, and they'll keep going. Anyway, on different note, the 20s. I went to watch the 20s against Samoa the other night. It was brilliant, actually, because I was sitting next to Andy Muir for Coach Logic, who's a top man, and one of the Dutch technical director, because they were playing America after. So it was interesting getting his insight, and incredible to think how much knowledge he has of what's going on in Scotland, but how much snobbery we've got about other countries. The work that's going on in Holland to make rugby better is outstanding. But I really felt for the Samoan squad, because they've had it all to deal with. One of their players had passed away just, I think, the night before. He'd been in a car crash about 3 weeks earlier, but had actually passed away just before. So there was a moment's silence before the game. But for a team to turn up having had very little preparation to try and perform, and Scotland just ran riot.
Yeah, I think, look, it was obviously difficult circumstances for them, but for me, from a rugby point of view, it looked like the opposite of what some of the results Scotland have been on the wrong end of in the Six Nations. We talk about guys that have played top 14 Premiership rugby playing for England and France, and our guys having relatively, no little game time at a high level. And I think maybe that difference in quality between the game time that some of our guys are getting and the academies and stuff that these Samoan guys are coming through. I thought, yeah, it was tough to watch. I said to you just before we came on, like, I genuinely don't know what Scotland will have got out of that, because after a point it becomes a glorified training run.
It turned into that really quickly. I mean, it was 30 odd points after 25 minutes, and Scotland played well, a lot of intensity, and I was quite pleased with how their skills stood up, because sometimes it's difficult to play against that, because you can take the closest space, and it means they never get a shot at the ball, and the scrum absolutely monstered Samoa. I mean, Tom Curry was playing number 8. It was actually a challenge for him to keep the ball under control, because they'd gone forward so quickly. I was delighted, and his name's now jumped to my head, which is bad. Scrum half was back. He'd played at Watson's school, and he got a really bad injury just, I think, as he was about to sign for Edinburgh leaving school. His name's going out my head, but what a player. Really, really strong skill set, decent kicker, but his leg was still heavily bandaged, I think, recovering from his knee injury. So he wasn't, I think he kicked just before he got taken off and Hector came on. But, what a feat for the Blyth Laffertys to be packing down together. Their old man, Billy, he's about 4 foot, but he'll have felt 10 feet tall seeing both his boys lining up together for Scotland at home. Great kids as well. Really, really good guys who have worked very hard. So there was positives to take, of course there was, but you're right, scoring 100 odd points is pretty tough for both teams.
Yeah, I just think, we've all been involved in games, unfortunately, like that, where if you're the winning team, there comes a point when the development you can take, or the performance side of it kind of falls away, because you're so far in front, and if you're Samoa, you're so demoralized by 30, 40 that actually, it's the feeling of 100 is terrible, and to have that representing your country after obviously a tough few days for some of the boys, you just hope that they'll be able to kind of put it to bed, don't look at it too much, and then kind of bounce back in the next round of games. But look, I think it shows that we used to get some of these scores in the World Cup. Like, I remember a game the All Blacks run riot against Italy, just as Italy had in the 1999 World Cup, and England did similarly to, I think it was the Dutch in a qualifier. Anyway, like, you used to get these huge scores a lot more often at the top level. I think we get them far less now. So when you see them, and to have 2 in the one day was obviously a bit of an anomaly. But
Hong Kong's going to be another sore one, and Samoa against Japan's probably going to be another sore one. So it's all coming down to Scotland, Japan. Conor McAlpine, the scrum half for Scotland. I can't believe I forgot his name. Cracking player. Mike Kerr did a lot with Conor at Watson's school, and delighted to see him back. I think he was a very good footballer, but rugby's his chosen one. There's a lot of good kids there. Ewan McVie, Malky's boy, playing in the second row, goes well. The back row, Liam McConnell, Freddie Douglas, who I think's an absolute monster, and Tom Curry. the three of them, I think the blend of that 6, 7, 8 is really, really strong, and three cracking lads.
You almost just want to take them as a three and just move them into a team because they are.
You're right. The worry is I don't know where they play because there's so many players ahead of them for Edinburgh. Super Six is not there. They're not with Glasgow, but Freddie Douglas is an out-and-out 7. It loves to turn the ball over, loves to make a nuisance of himself, hungry for work. Tom Curry carries, smart rugby player. Liam McConnell's a leader of men, a line-out option as well. It gets around the park. I think that 6, 7, and 8 are very, very strong. Fergus Watson at 15, Bill Watson's grandson, scored, I don't know how many tries he scored, but he looked good in the Six Nations. So it's going to be interesting to see how they go. Not against Hong Kong, because I think that one's probably going to be similar, but it's all going to come down to the Japan game.
Yeah, and I think Luke, Scotland should have won that. Should have won the competition last year. I think it was obviously a sore defeat in the semi-final to Uruguay. That's not acceptable, I think, and let's not sugarcoat that. Scotland should be playing in the under-20, the main World Cup, and not the kind of second-tier tournament. So I think if they can go and get a few decent results, build a bit of confidence, and actually win that tournament, get themselves back into the main World Cup, then that'll be a successful summer for them. But
it would be class to win a tournament at home because they're not going to win the Six Nations. Well, this group of players are not going to win the Six Nations. Scotland might in future. Who knows what will happen? But to win a tournament, I know it's not the top one, but to win a tournament at home in front of your family and your pals, and your schoolmates that are coming back for the summer to watch you, it would be an amazing thing. And I hope I'm there to see it. I hope they do it. I don't know if they will because how do you tell? It's so difficult to measure. But there's some good signs there of young players that have potential, and that's now over at Scottish Rugby. You got to take that potential that is in a 19, 20-year-old body, and hopefully we're going to see it as a 23, 24-year-old international, or somebody that's going to get 150 games for Glasgow or Edinburgh. That's how it should and I hope will be measured.
Yeah. I think the worry for me is you talk about Freddie Douglas. Like I spoke to Stuart Edwards, who obviously coached him at school, and he said, basically that Freddie's base now is further on than where Hamish Watson's base was at the same age. And when you think of that comparison and what Hamish Watson's gone on to done because he was afforded opportunities at an early age with Edinburgh, where, as you say, where do the opportunities come for somebody like Freddie, who's pushing Luke Crosby and Hamish Watson and Jamie Ritchie out the road to get in the Edinburgh team
and keep going because there's Connor Boyle still there kicking his heels and wanting to get going. And the Freddie Douglas, he was just right in front of me at a kickoff because there's plenty of them, and he was just right in front of me. The body shape on the kid is phenomenal. His shoulders are about 4 foot wide, but he just loves it. His appetite for it. But the thing I love the most is he makes really smart decisions. He doesn't get penalised that often. He creates really strong turnovers. Samoa weren't that flash, right? I get that, but he got 3 or 4 just prime, absolutely great timing. And I know what do you learn from a game like that, but he was being given game speed opportunities to make decisions, and I thought he did it really well. Hong Kong, it'll be interesting to see what team Kenny picks for Hong Kong. Does he give the other boys a go, or does he try and keep momentum going into the Japan game? I don't know, because it's that Japan game has come like a cup final. Got to win that.
And I think that's it. I think you don't want to go into that having had the chance, to rest players and get through a game without injuries, and then all of a sudden find yourself without a Liam McConnell, a Freddie Douglas, a Tom Curry, one of the Blythe Laffertys, who've become all of a sudden so important that actually you've got a squad. All due respect to the opposition, the chances are Scotland are going to rack up another big score. Could you wrap a couple of guys in cotton wool? And it's not like they won't play for weeks. The game's next weekend. So next
Friday, I think it is.
Friday, next Friday night. So it's a very interesting one, but I think whatever Kenny does, he's at least got this week to kind of mull over, because they should win comfortably at the weekend.
They're all staying out in St Andrews all together, all the teams together, which I think is quite a cool thing, that they get to mix and speak to folk. And it's not a tour, it's a tournament, but it's a chance for them to mix and chat to other boys and see boys for other cultures. So a good thing, and I'm chuffed I'm getting to see it. I'll go to the Hong Kong game on Sunday. I'm looking forward to it. I'll not be here for the Japan game, unfortunately, but hopefully I'm there for them doing the next bits. Scottish Rugby celebrating with Blair Kinghorn. I mean, we've spoken about him a couple of times, but you see the photos of him wearing his Scotland top, Scotland football top, and he's got 2 trophies, and you're thinking there's not many Scots sports stars able to claim the success he has. 14 games, 14 wins, 2 trophies, 8 tries, 5 assists, whatever the stats are. I mean, he must be pinching himself.
It's only 7 tries and 3 assists, but we'll let you slide on that one.
There you go.
It jumped out at me November, December time that Blair Kinghorn joining Toulouse was an odd move. An odd move maybe because did I think he would play every week? No. Did I think it would help from a Scotland point of view? Probably in the long term, because I think if you play and train with better players, you get better yourself. But did I anticipate it going this well for him this quickly? Definitely not. And I don't think, from speaking to him a couple of weeks ago, I don't think he did either. Winning that club's obviously got such a rich European history. So to win the Champions Cup was probably something that he'd been sold the dream, but to go and do it is incredible. And then the way that they backed it up to win the top 14 in that ridiculous fashion. I don't think I've seen it as one-sided a final.
I don't know, but Boroughmuir beat Hawick 55-17 in the cup final once. That was pretty impressive, I have to say.
It was a coaching masterclass.
Ben Fisher and Steve Bates did a great job that day.
Some other guy hogged the trophy.
I don't know who that was. It was like John Terry getting down on the pitch in his kit. You're right. To have it, I don't think MD predicted that. I think folk thought Toulouse were going to win. I think experts who know a lot more about top 14 than me were saying Toulouse are going to win, and obviously having just done what they'd done, it made sense. But to have blown them away like that, it says probably more about Toulouse than it does about anything else. I mean, winning's hard. Winning as a habit is tough. Anybody can lose. Losing's easy. Everybody can do that. Winning's really, really hard. And to win in that manner on that stage, I mean, as a coach, he must have just been sitting up there thinking, look at what I've done. Look at what pat yourself on the back, son. That was impressive.
It does help when you've got Antoine Dupont, who is just
And I know that, but if you're in opposition, you're going
this weekend.
If you're playing against that, though, when you're coaching against a good 9 or a good 10, you start talking about how do we cut off the supply to them? Let's do it at source. But it's so difficult in first phase now to upset a scrum or to steal a line out. The odds are absolutely stacked towards the attack. So how do you get to Dupont? In the days of grabbing them late, or they're gone too. So I mean, nines have become like an endangered species. They're so protected, you can't do anything you can't do anything to a 9 now. They get away with murder. They're able to run riot. And when you're as good as DuPont, I mean, the chip and chase is just
next level. Just like, but I think the other problem for opposition teams is, particularly when you look at Toulouse. Okay, if you double mark DuPont, you give room somewhere for Intermac or for Ramos or for Kinghorn. They're like they've got a like a PlayStation game team.
Aye.
It is just ridiculous.
It's like Fantasy League, but
it
you've
is like
got no
proper video
restrictions.
game stuff.
Yeah.
Although
DuPont's good, but he's not George Horn.
I mean, we've clearly established that, and I know we'll speak about Scotland later on. I'm delighted to see we've gone down the South African route of trying to squeeze scrum halves in the squad anywhere we can. But nah, look, Toulouse were sensational, and I saw Blair was in having his dodgy nose fixed up the other day. So yeah, I'm sure he'll enjoy a new nose, a summer off, and then let's see what next season brings for him. But like the chance of doing what he's done this season again is right there with the squad they've got.
I can remember speaking to a couple of Scottish boys that played in France, and the story I got about Toulouse specifically is the last person to find out is the agent. That the sporting director would speak to the players and say, we're interested in this guy. What do you think? And the players were almost the due diligence.
Yeah.
Good guy, good player, this in the camp, this and I can remember, and I can't tell this, I can't name names, but I can remember a player saying he was approached about a Scottish player, but the Scottish player never went for various reasons, but they never actually went. But the player's agent never knew that there was interest from Toulouse. So, I don't know what due diligence they did with Blair, but he's gone and he's obviously probably exceeded what were high expectations, because he was at 15 and then they were playing him on the wing because they obviously wanted him to be in there. And it wasn't that long ago we were being told he was an international standoff.
He definitely isn't. That was just nonsense.
But what he is I think, and Duncan Hodge always speaks very highly of Blair, and he's worked far more closely and has got a far better rugby brain than I have. But Hodgie would talk about Blair and tell you how good a player Blair is. Toulouse obviously know that, and he's played very, very well there and shown himself, I think, to be a world-class rugby player.
Yeah, and I think once we nail down the fact that the guy is a back three player at the very, very, very top level, you do your job at 10 for Edinburgh, and particularly the way that Mike Blair was head coach, the way that he wanted them to play suited Blair to play 10. But at the very top level, playing 15 or playing on the wing is his position. And I think the way he's played in the last 6 months, he's genuinely now propelled himself into the conversation with somebody like Hugo Keenan to be the Lions fullback next summer.
That's interesting actually, because you're right, and I wasn't thinking Blair Lions on the horizon, but he's timed that really well. The issue always with the French-based players is the timing, though, isn't it?
Yeah, this is it. I think it'll be interesting. I'm not sure what the release agreement is, but that's always been a factor in the past. You would hope that Toulouse wouldn't stand in his way with their ridiculous Galactico squad. They would Ange Capuzzo, I think, only came off the bench for 10 minutes at the weekend, so he might fancy a run, and they could send.
I saw there was one of the social media sites getting excited about him and it was his stats, which obviously looked amazing, because by the time he came on, it was cigars out, and he carried for 95 metres. But that was to run all the way and score a try, and it was great. But Bordeaux have strengthened their squad for next year.
Yes, Johnny Gray.
How long do you think that took to decide?
Yeah, Exeter or Bordeaux. I mean, look, a great move for him. I think he's obviously had a dreadful 12 months in that he's been, had a terrible injury, missed the World Cup, hasn't played since. It has obviously been difficult for him. He was at Scotstoun for it would have been the quarter-final against the Stormers to watch his big brother. And look, I think this has been a move that's been in the pipeline for a while. And obviously a tough end to the season for Bordeaux, not the way I imagine they thought they would be finishing the season, but you hope that he goes there and he really can kind of rediscover that form, because actually he's even now he's fit, you kind of forget about Johnny Gray in the Scotland picture. There's it's a position with so many second rows, but at his best, a lot of people would say there's room for Johnny Gray in the best Scotland team. So let's see how it goes. But an interesting move for him, and I think his game suits playing in the top 14. Pretty physical. So we'll see how it goes.
I think it's another great move for Scottish rugby. It's another sign that Scottish rugby players are good. It's easy to chuck mud at URC, at Scottish players, at Italian, whatever it is, but to have somebody go into, and it's one of the top teams, because Mako Vunipola is away to Van, I think, isn't he?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So, Johnny Gray's away to Bordeaux. There's a chance there for him to have a real crack. I think it's brilliant, and fair play to him. I mean, there'll be poorer places to go to than Bordeaux. I think he'll probably enjoy that one. Right, my man, we need to get to something that's wound me up a fair bit. The Scotland selection to play Canada at the weekend. My daughter actually took great delight in telling me yesterday one of our pals is away to see her family in Canada, and she's getting to go to the game. So I'm jealous of a 14-year-old lassie getting to go and watch Scotland, but I would love to be there in Canada. What a country and what an opportunity. But the team's interesting selection, some new caps, chances for some boys to stick their hands up.
Yeah, I think interesting is probably a fair way to describe the whole tour. I think we'll have this conversation another 2 or 3 times. Look, I think this tour was always going to be about experiment, about new combinations, about some names and some faces that people may literally never have seen before. There's 10 of the 11 uncapped players in the squad. In this team, Paddy Harrison must be thinking, what have I done wrong, Gregor? But
whereas Ross McCann is rubbing his hands.
Look, from despair to of not making the Olympics to now he's Gregor said last night when we spoke to him that Ross will get on, so he's been guaranteed a first Scotland cap, and he's only played a handful of pro games in 15. So could he have predicted that 2 weeks ago? I don't think so.
It's another one I'm claiming, by the way. I'm claiming Ross McCann when he was inducted into Melrose Sevens Hall of Fame.
Oh yeah,
I'm telling you, it's the Brucey touch. It's what it is.
Let's hope that hashtag doesn't catch on.
Couldn't get me in bother. Jamie Dobie on the ding-a-ling.
Yeah, look, as I said earlier, found a way of shoehorning scrum halves into anywhere in the team, but I actually think he's been really good there for Glasgow. Like,
he's a class rugby player.
And he is a class rugby player. I always remember Kenny Murray when he was assistant coach at Glasgow, likening Jamie Dobie, who must have been like straight out of school, first year at Scotstoun, to Gary Armstrong. And I thought, hang on a minute, like, let's put the brakes on this. This is a teenager. That's pretty high praise. And his career maybe has not had that like massive upward trajectory yet, but I think this has been a real kind of breakthrough season for him, because he's actually been he was trusted in the semi-final and the final to come on the wing in place of a guy who's got like caps for Argentina and do a job, you know, and he's done it. And I think Gregor spoke a wee bit last night about having that second passer that if you make a line break on the opposite side of the field from where you've had the previous phase, you've got a guy who's got a pretty decent pass to start you off again, and that'll help. But also, you know, he referenced things like Jamie's work under the high ball, which isn't an area you would imagine as a 9 you would practice an awful lot. So that must be a natural thing, something.
He's a rugby player. He's class. His skills, his fitness are supreme. And I said this to you when we were naming the squad. Roddy Deans is going to pee his pants because Stafford's starting at 12. Matt Curry is at 13 and Jamie's at 14. So he's 3 Merky boys all getting to play. That's getting him very excited. Number 10, interesting choice.
It is an interesting choice, Ross Thompson, because he hasn't played that much for Glasgow. But I think when he has played, he's done all right. And I think there are probably, we said this before when the squad was named, there are probably bigger challenges on this tour that, like, I think a lot of basically reading between the lines, a lot of the guys who are rested this weekend, so like Hugh Jones, Sione, Duhan, Jamie Ritchie, will probably play next week against America. And you would expect one of probably Adam Hastings or Ben Healy, who's on the bench, to start that game, and then Ross maybe to get another opportunity in South America. So I think it's the perfect game for him to come in and like almost find his feet again at international level. Actually, in 2018, when they took a squad to Argentina, that was almost like Adam Hastings kind of broke through on that tour. So yeah, I think it'll do Ross Thompson the world of good to get a start and to have Stafford at 12. I think will help him because they'll know each other from playing at Glasgow. And yeah, I think if we get any kind of rubbish ball, Stafford will maybe make a fair few inroads into the midfield. So yeah, I expect Scotland to win, and to be honest, even with the strength of the squad, I expect us to win pretty comfortably.
Yeah, and the forward pack, I mean, there's not a lot of caps there.
Thank goodness for Rory Sutherland, because he's got most of them.
I'm delighted Suz is getting to start. I think that's incredible for him. You know, we don't know a lot about Dylan Richardson. Elliot Miller-Mills was Six Nations squad and plays at Northampton Saints. You know, Max Williamson, we don't know a huge amount about. Glenn Young will be what a guy. Chugga Jed will be going nuts having Chugga in there. Gregor Brown, don't know a huge amount about. Luke Crosby's obviously co-captain, and you know, we know, and he's had to bide his time with Scotland largely. Josh Bayliss at 8, interesting.
Yeah, I think the pack as a whole is pretty interesting because Max Williamson for me is like an out-and-out second row, but Glenn Young is somebody who's shown for Quins, for Edinburgh, for Scotland, to be fair, in the past, that I actually think, you know, he's one of these who could do a job in the back row if you were pushed. So I think it says to me that Gregor wants to go, we're going to play.
Yeah.
You know, we've got guys on the field here who can all play. The back row, we've said before, like Josh Bayliss is rapid. And I think his pace is his real point of difference. I think Crosby will get stuck in, and I'm not convinced that Crosby is of the same ceiling as Darge or Ritchie, but what I think he gives you is that consistent level of performance every single week, where the others kind of fluctuate a wee bit more. And Gregor Brown at 6, I think, has had a great season. Obviously played a bit in the second row at the end of the year for Glasgow, but at 6 this weekend, I think, is his best position. So it'll be interesting to see if he can make that kind of step to the next level. And look, like there was a piece on the site about Dylan Richardson from Rob Robertson talking about him being the kind of breakthrough player of the tour. And actually, when you look at hookers, like, well, Johnny Matthews isn't there, and folk can say what they want about that. I think it's strange, but we don't have now huge depth at hooker, and this tour could be one where any one of the 3 or 4 that are there say, actually, this is going to be my, I'm putting my hand up to be probably second choice to Ewan Ashman.
Yeah. What are you thinking? Is this a 50-pointer, 60-pointer?
I think somewhere in the region of 30 to 40 points. I think
because that team's going to score tries. That's the purpose. It's fast, it's young. That the back line is just wanting to play. There's a lot there, and I'm delighted Harry Patterson's back. I think the kid's outstanding. I think he's a great kid. I think he's a great human. I'm really chuffed to see him. I mean, they'll all, I would imagine they're going to be hungry because, like you said, this is a chance.
Well, you think of some of those guys. Harry Patterson missed the end of the season through injury, so hasn't played for ages. Matt Curry hasn't played for ages because Edinburgh got knocked out before the playoffs. Stafford, hasn't played for ages because he got his hand injury. Although he was involved with Glasgow, he hasn't actually played. So all these guys will want an opportunity to say, Dobie's playing on the wing. He'll want to put a marker down and say, actually, I am good enough to play here at this level, regardless of what the opposition bring.
He's going to move to 9 though, isn't he? With the bench they've got with Kyle Steyn and Ross McCann, War's going to come off and Dobie's going to move to 9, so he is going to get a bit of game at 9.
Yeah, and I think Gregor had said that he will get a bit of time at 9 on Saturday, and he'll get a bit of time at 9. I think basically he'll start one of the South American games at 9, and I think that's good for him because 9's his position, and you'd feel a bit conflicted, I think, if you were on a Scotland tour of this nature and you were played out of position. So yeah, I think that's definitely a good thing for Scottish rugby, but for him as well. But you look at the other two, like Gus Waugh and Aaron Reid. Like Aaron Reid got married last Friday, then must have come up the road and flown out with the squad on Saturday morning.
Belting honeymoon. What a honeymoon.
I'm not sure his missus will be saying that, but look, great opportunity for him because he was obviously involved in the Six Nations, didn't play. Gus Waugh's not been involved with Scotland before, but probably should have been. So, yeah, I think, look, as you say, the team's there to score, set up to score loads of points. My worry is that we go at that after a score too early and then get caught. I think what I want to see more than anything from Scotland at the weekend is like a relentlessness of performance. And if they do get 20 points up, that there's not a 25, 30 minute dip. And, I've said it before, but the thing for me on this tour will be that if they can make sure the Scotland's best performance, the gap between Scotland's best and Scotland's worst is closed, then I think that'll be a success. But obviously that comes as well with 4 wins.
I'm interested to see if moving forward Dobie becomes really important to 23, because Gregor can then go 6 forwards, Dobie on the bench, 9 or wing, with somebody that can play 10 or somebody that can play 10 in centre. So it'll be interesting to see how valuable this goes, that Dobie can do more than one thing.
I think particularly when you look at somebody like Kinghorn, who can play 10, wing, 15, I think, reading between the lines, because Ross McCann's there, I think Kyle Steyn will probably come on in the centre. So you start looking at longer term, there are actually pieces of a jigsaw being kind of filled in here.
Well, you're not. Finn's going to play every second of the 80 minutes unless the game's gone either way.
Yeah.
So you're not taking Finn off, and right back to Jaco van der Vaart sat on the bench, didn't get off the bench because you didn't take Finn off. Ben Healy's had similar. So you're buying yourself a player by saying, right, like you say, Blair's going to start at 15. I would imagine if something happened to Finn, Blair moves up, but we're going to take the gamble that we're not going to have an out-and-out 10 on the bench, and Dobie can play on the wing, and somebody can go to fullback if needed from the wing.
Yeah, I think that's it. And I think if you look at, the only thing I would say about that is the one game Glasgow slipped up in last season was that quarter-final against Munster, and they got totally caught out because they didn't have a 10 on the bench and Tom Jordan got red carded. So if total disaster struck and Finn pulled his hammy in the first minute, considering Blair then plays wing and 15 for Toulouse, we would be in panic stations. And I think that's where, like, this is a totally classic French thing, but it would be great to have a 9 like Greg used to do, who could also play 10, because it just gives you that absolute coverage. Like, George Horn will kick goals all day, but to just have somebody that actually can steer the ship from 10 would be a help. But look, I think it is an important thing that, like, if you're looking at World Cups and stuff, the squad's pretty limited. So guys that can play. The other one, like, talking about guys who can play in different positions, I'm interested to see if Dylan Richardson gets 20 minutes in the back row, because he's actually, like, they've said he's a hooker in this squad, but he's actually played a lot in the back row. Probably more actually than he's played at hooker. He started at hooker, moved to the back row, now he's moved back. But I think they'll give him time, because I think things like that, how often did Fraser Brown play in the back row for Scotland?
I think his domestic situation is going to be interesting to see over the next wee while. Now that he's properly Scottish, it'll be interesting to see. Yeah, listen, mate, class, loved it. It's we thought, there'll not be a lot to talk about in the summer, and then all of a sudden we've snotted out 50 minutes and we could still keep going. But so the prediction is 30, 40 points, Scotland against Canada, you reckon?
I think so. I think, yeah, I'd like to say pretty comfortable Scotland win, and hopefully a bucket load of tries and absolutely no sign of an absolute banana skin, because that would be total disaster.
And we've sounded like true Scotland fans because we've built it up, and it's the hope that kills you. We thought we were going to qualify out the Euros. We thought we were going to win the World Cup 1978. We thought we were going to win the Grand Slam this year. So, yeah, Andy Murray was going to win Wimbledon. We've done it all. Gav, great to see you. Look after yourself, big man. Really enjoyed it. Mate. And we'll see what this weekend brings. You can subscribe for £1 for 6 months, and then the price jacks up. So get in now while you still can, or £12 for 12 months to get all the news from Scotland rugby news firsthand. He was Gavin Harper, editor extraordinaire. My name is Bruce Aitchison. We'll see you all again very, very soon. Come on, Scotland.